So we go.
Hello, so I went to Velocity in Barcelona and I thought I'd share what I learned with everyone, or the subset of people that could come. But anyway, I got to go to Barcelona. And it turns out Barcelona is better than London, where Velocity usually is, which is why we had less people going. That was the view from the balcony of the conference centre. So, sat there having a nice Coke. In the morning, obviously, because it's me. It was pretty awesome. And the other thing I learned going to Velocity Conference is that Spanish people really like brie. Like, I like cheese. Like, I really like cheese. But, like, brie on everything. So I had, like, a 5-cheese pizza or whatever. Most of it was brie. And it's really heavy. I struggled. Barcelona, better than London. And they really like brie. Oh, and sandwich at the airport, more brie. Just constant brie. If you'd like to know more, Barcelona Tourist Board, there's a London bad weather image search, and there's some details on brie. And that's basically it. But no, there's more. I couldn't think of any comedy gifs to intersperse with this talk, and that made me sad, until Andy pointed out that they don't actually have to be related to what I'm talking about. So here's some random images of pugs, the Ship It Squirrel features in there, and I think Chuck Norris features at the end. Basically, Hubot, which we're playing around with at the moment, I just got him to do it. Ultimately, we may be able to get Hubert to write the brown bags for us, but for now, it's just the pug search. Pug Bomb 10, awesome. So, I went mostly to DevOps talks, because it's more interesting than web performance, which really hasn't had that many breakthroughs since we decided that putting scripts at the bottom was a good idea. Lots of them were talking about, the DevOps talks were talking about tools, stuff like that. One of the good ones right at the beginning in the keynotes was how to deal with human error, because, lots of what goes wrong in IT is generally down to human error, which is fine, because the computers tend to respond to what we do. The problem is how you phrase it. The ways that we look into things tend to reach non-useful conclusions, such as even when you're doing blameless post-mortems, it can be easy to say it was not that person's fault, but that area's perhaps was the area of the problem, not actually what the root cause of the failing actually was. They didn't have so-and-so, so how could they be expected to make the right call, that sort of thing. So he was mainly talking about studying the entire system, looking at avoiding language that points to individual people, that kind of thing, and then perhaps the suggestion, and it's been backed up in things I've read outside of that as well, 5 whys as a post-mortem technique isn't 100% awesome. It's a good start off, potentially, but there are better ways of doing it. I'll try and think about that meaning. There's a video, because it was a keynote, so lots of them have either videos or slides. I'm now really conscious that I'm waving a thing a bit of a Egypt. But yeah, there's quite a few of them have videos or links to slide decks, which will describe it a lot better than I can, somewhat further invalidating this brown bag, but cheers for coming anyway. Another comedy gif. Ship It Squirrel. It's a boat. It seemed to come in halfway there. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure what its relation to shipping is. Oh, it's a ship. There you go. Took me a while.
He's been prepping this for months.
I really have. Well thought through. One of the really good ones is from someone from Google whose name I can't pronounce. Stu, can you pronounce the Gorvik's name? No. Here's a website. So basically, the SSL or TLS always gets accused of being slow. So people often ask him, is TLS fast yet? And his response is, yes, everything else can be optimized. So basically, just switch to it and we'll optimize, we'll get it optimized sort of thing. There shouldn't really be the question, is it fast enough? It can be fast enough. It's just, it hasn't been optimized yet. So there's a link, sslabs.com/SSL test. I haven't actually run that on us yet, probably should. A really good tool he suggested to work out whether you are optimizing your SSL certificates correctly or not is if you do web page tests, but you put it in 3G mode, because it basically accentuates everything. So the round trip time for SSL might not be visible, so you couldn't see it doing 1, 2, 3 trips. But if you put it in 3G mode, then it becomes a lot more obvious. The ciphers that we use, so obviously everyone heard of the Poodle exploit. downgrade attack using SSL. So there's different ciphers you can use for SSL. Some are very, very, very old, such as SSL3, and therefore are riddled with security issues. They're also quite slow. Ironically, the newer, more secure ciphers are quicker because, better algorithms since then. So, make sure you switch to the newest ones. Obviously, that's a balancing act between what you want to support and what's going to break old clients, that kind of thing. The good news, we can't actually take bookings of IE6 now. So essentially, we've dropped support for IE6 because IE6 can only support SSL3. There's some stuff for Linux to make sure you're on the latest stuff, and it really comes down to making sure you minimize the handshake. So that's where looking at those is important. You should be aiming for 1. So the way that round trips work, if you need to go back and forth for lots of information, then you end up in the handshake phase having to do multiple round trips. That can be really slow. So the idea is to minimize it as much as possible. Cheers, Andy. He's tweeted that this shit thing is. So yeah, you minimize round trips, that's good. Stuff like that you can include intermediary certificates, not the root, so the client doesn't have to go and get it, because that can be slow as well. You should keep track of 301 chains, so I made a note at the time that we could keep track of that with Elk. Plugging my own tools. And then, if we really get towards being able to SSL all the things, which we should probably be looking at, there's a directory or a header called HSTS, which basically says, I support SSL by default, so don't bother with HTTP first. So that's what, when you go to Facebook, it's got already on HTTPS, even though you just type www.facebook.com. It's because they support that header, and there's also a directory, so your very first trip doesn't have to be to HTTP before it redirects you. Kind of thing. Kind of like what we do in reverse. So you try and come to us securely, and we punt you back to HTTP. A move towards HTTPS is good in general. Increases customer confidence because you get a little lock and stuff like that. It's easier to migrate to speedy/HTTP2. And it's a signal now, a very weak one in Google search, but it could get more important. There's a website from that guy, and lots of his stuff is very good. He's written the book on networking performance. He's spoken at multiple velocities. He's a generally very, very intelligent guy on the whole sort of HTTP networking performance stuff, TCP frame size, all sorts of stuff. He's very good. Definitely look into stuff he's done. Ship it, Squirrel. So one of the other ones I went to was really good. There's a chap from Etsy who talked about cognitive bias. He recommended a book right from the start called Thinking Fast and Slow. Al wandered by and looked over my shoulder that I was writing the slide and said, "Oh, I've read that book. The first half's really good and the second half's a bit rubbish." I paraphrase because obviously I don't talk like that. But that's essentially, so apparently read the first half of that book. I've not read any half of it yet.
People want reading the fast, so you read the fast section.
One would imagine I don't have to read the fast one yet. I could probably read the second section based on that. I think slower. Talk slower. I know. So what I liked about this one was it went through lots of things that we do, and we know that we do. We already have tactics to fight quite a few of these things, but it gives the proper name and suggests some other solutions for it as well, which was quite good. For me, it was quite good to kind of have some of the stuff we do as agile things backed up as to why we do them and the actual kind of the reasoning behind them. So there's a projection bias. So that's your assumption that other people will share your priorities. Now, I might assume that, to me, making sure we build in a really reliable, quick manner is just as much a priority to Simon as it is to me. But in actual fact, he's much got high priorities to make sure that we can scale up to 100% now. Damn it, that's per board. So it's kind of making sure the really useful solutions for that one, not all useful, was switching roles and empathy. You can apparently just turn that on. Planning fallacy, we know we all tend to underestimate. Oh yeah, that'll be a 1, that'll take me 5 minutes. Oh yeah, it'll be 2 weeks. Mine's 2 weeks, things always take 2 weeks. So, we do spikes, we prototype, we can use historic data, or we can use planning poker to minimize those impacts. The bandwagon effect, we already know from retros and stuff, or the whole planning poker thing as well again, that people will tend to wait to see what everyone else is doing and then comment, probably in line with what either the person they value's opinion on the room is, or the general what everyone else is going for. So, make decisions async. So say, run it over email and give people a long period to respond to, like the tech radar. It's a good way of doing that. Or allowing people to provide confidential feedback. Or again, planning poker. He mentioned that quite a bit. I don't even think that's in use for sunk cost fallacy. No comment. Basically, you will continue based on the cost already committed. And against all reasoning that perhaps you probably should have cut your losses and run. So, always keep on track of ongoing ROI, cut losses when it makes sense, that kind of thing. I like the name of this one. Hyperbolic discounting. Essentially, that people will favour immediate rewards over long term. So he referenced that there's an experiment called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment, although the type of reward does vary, pretzels, that kind of thing. Basically, they got a bunch of children, put them in a room with one type of the reward and said, if you don't touch that, and you can wait 10 minutes, then you get another one of those. So if you either eat the marshmallow immediately, or if you wait 10 minutes, you get 2 marshmallows. You eat immediately, no 2 marshmallows. And they then measured how many people favoured the short-term reward. What they found was that a very small percentage of people just went, children went, yoink, ate it immediately. I think it was about a third of people wasted it and then just ate it, and a small percentage of people actually could hold on, and it was quite age-related. But it's kind of we're quite geared towards short-term reward. We're not really geared for thinking long-term and strategically and thinking we have to take a hit now so that we get a better long-term reward, which we've seen as well, death, etc. He didn't add any solutions for that. Useful. And fundamental attribution error. People tend to place emphasis on individual characteristics, and that's the sort of thing where you end up with individual blame. That's why we will think when something goes wrong that it was a fault within, say, the support department, or it tends to be fairly personal as well. You say, oh, this went wrong because I made a mistake. It tends to emphasize characteristics of people, not characteristics of the system, and that's why.
Say it was Joe's fault.
Yeah, it's always Joe's fault.
Yeah,
and that's why you have blameless post-mortem, so that you can make very, very elaborate justifications as to why it's Joe's fault. And he had a link to both the talk and his slides, and lots of information on cognitive biases and those sorts of things. His was very good and very well backed up. And there's a lot of people from Exeter there talking. They're smart or something. I don't know what that is. Pugs been Lord of the Rings. One of the ones performance I went to was quite good, and it was Synthetic versus Rum. I actually went to this one because there was a gap in the schedule that I didn't have anything I wanted to go to, so I kind of went to this one, sat at the back, went on my laptop. But it turns out it was quite interesting, which was good. It was 2 APM providers, which is never a good start, presenting on Synthetic versus Rum. So you're kind of thinking that unless it was going to turn into fisticuffs, which would have been admittedly awesome, that it was just going to be them both pimping their respective wares. But in actual fact, they were talking more abstractly than that, thankfully. It wasn't just kind of like, oh, CompuWare can do this, we can help you solutionize, blah. So the ROM stuff we're pretty good at, because we've got shitloads of ROM data, New Relic, Cabana, all that stuff. We're really good at gathering lots of ROM data and analysing it. But I think what we may have got a gap in is actually having lots of making our synthetic data visible as well and using it better. So, sorry, I kind of skated over that. Everyone know what ROM is?
Real user monitoring?
Yes. So that's where we take beaconing information back from the user's browser and warehouse it back in our own system on New Relic and so forth. It's really good because it's actually what's happening. So for years, it would just be like ping, 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 the performance was this, which wasn't really what the user was seeing. There's still a place for that kind of, on a scheduled job, do a check, but it's more for getting deeper analysis. ROM's never going to give you what the user saw in terms of film strips. You can see blank, 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 blank image. You can do it in clean rooms, so ROM data is noisy as hell. I mean, we get data in the Moonstick data indicating that users have taken 24 hours to load a page, which is impressive. So it's a lot more reliable. You can, do a release and say the baseline was this, and post-release it was this. Whereas with ROM data, you don't know if it was a release or whether, one of the routing points went down on the interwebs, and suddenly a lot of users are getting very slow network connection, no fault of your release. So that's very useful for that. I think we do good competitive benchmarking. We found that, well, I can't remember what the group's called that we used. The ones that said we were best, and then
That's
the
right.
CompuWare. So they basically just give you a league table, and we hooked onto the Travel One and went, wow, we're the best, and then we're third. Yeah. But what we could be doing is looking at not just Travel. CompuWare do, and we don't appear on the league table, but we could do it ourselves and say, let's look at Tesco, Amazon, a bunch of other ones, build our own league table and find where we are, because Travel's kind of a bit like shooting fish in a mower. It's easy to win. With the competition isn't great. So we could be holding ourselves to a higher standard. Let's beat Tesco and their homepage team. Let's beat Amazon and their very smart people. And he mentioned was something which was quite good that I thought was don't communicate in seconds. People don't tend to be able to relate the magnitude between seconds in a sort of a way they think about it, especially when you get down to mobile and trying to beat 1 second. The difference, therefore, between a second and 0.9 seconds is actually quite big. It doesn't sound that big. Why do you care about the tenth of a second? So instead, do it in ranking, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then proportionate and say we are 150% slower than Tesco.com instead of we are 300 milliseconds slower, that kind of thing.
It's also pretty useful to have that right in front of you. If we get some sort of traffic and we have a status on all of our competitors, we haven't exactly got that much of a loyal customer base in either of our competitors in most cases. Yeah. The reason why we might have a jump up in traffic is something that they're slower or
we get
unavailable for a amount of days.
We get that report, was it monthly or quarterly, the CompuWare one?
Yes.
We did.
We did.
Yeah. We never actually finished the results. The system for doing the measuring was very reliable because it involved QA to
Yes.
I understand.
The other one I really liked was he had this graph, in a very literal sense, of correlating performance to visual breakpoints. So we do a lot of sort of performance analysis on different devices that, from different geographical locations. But we've got a responsive site. Do we tune performance based on your visual breakpoint using, so the mobile size of the pages is the same as the desktop one, and being able to actually show graphically that you're downloading this amount of content for mobile, this amount of content for tablet, this amount of content for desktop, and show the breakpoints and show the progression and the breakpoints. Because what you would hopefully have is less data being downloaded for mobile and more for desktop for devices that can support it. Hopefully. And just
images. Responsive images would help with that.
Exactly. But you'd be able to visualize. It's creating a feedback loop for that, though, because at the moment we know it's a bit crap and what we've got, but in terms of that area, we don't have a way of visualizing it and feedback cycling it. So I think that was one of the things that kind of resonated for me, and I did ask Danny how difficult it would be to get that output from Moonraker, because Moonraker already runs under multiple breakpoints, so can we output the performance data from that as well? Should be easy once we get that to graph it.
Quite important as well. There's projects where it's a great point for just hiding the content. So CSS will just say, don't display this to the device. But the device is still having to pull it down, even though CSS will say, at this breakpoint it's not visible. You've got actually quite a bit of work to start taking stuff out of your...
Well, downloading it is a fairly common one, but if you're then rendering the images hidden, that's a major concern.
No, that's great.
And then the last point was that the different numbers are relevant to different stakeholders. So you have to, you've got lots of different interested parties who care about, how you're performing. Your CEO probably doesn't care about the nitty-gritty numbers. They might care about where you position yourself within competitors. So that's where the proportional data might come into effect and the competitor standings. Whereas your designery folk are probably more interested in about when everything above the fold is fully rendered. UX people are probably more interested in when the site's usable. And then your techie people, on load, something like that. So the different, making the different numbers relevant and identifying which numbers are relevant to which stakeholders, and then allowing them to be displayed to those people. And then they went on about run stuff, which we're pretty good at. So I ignored that bit. It's another chicken squirrel. So one of the ones that you can totally tell from the number of slides that I really enjoyed was one of the reasons I really wanted to go was Ryan Frantz from Etsy, once more, was talking about alerting. In terms of sort of trying to improve the situation for alerting and on out of hours, he's been doing lots. He's hooked up with a local university to those guys and is doing a sleep study with people on call using Fitbit, stuff like that. He's written an entire plugin, which I'll touch on in a bit, for Nagios, which allows you to add context. He's doing loads, and he's a really good speaker about this sort of thing as well, which is good. His point was there are no good alerts, so all alerts are bad. You're never going to get one that comes in and says, "The site is awesome, good job," because you probably wouldn't be happy woken up 2 in the morning with that. And he touched on alert fatigue, which is something that the guys on Duty Manager call would definitely be able to emphasise with. They get bad nights. They would get woken up pretty much every 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You're never going to get to sleep like that. You're going to come in completely useless. So, the way that we structure our on-call means that a bunch of our service people have some kind of sleep deprivation torture applied to them on a fairly regular basis. So alert fatigue is a real thing. We have a lot of low-value alerts. We have a lot of high-value volume alerts. We do have quite a few that work, but there's quite a few that just basically wake people up for no reason. The journey alerts being a key one. Afghan journey's down, and then 5 minutes later, oh no, it's fine. We're trying to work on that at the moment, but it's then lack of context can be a big deal as well. So just alerts that say this does not useful. No, that's small. So this is an example he showed us from one of Etsy's alert. It basically says the state is now critical. It's an Nagios alert. It doesn't say this in general. For 1 minute was critical after 3 or 3 checks. This would be very similar to what we get for iSinger. Additional information: critical, nothing was checked. Something is wrong. Please check. Which is useful. I like that it's told you that nothing was checked, as if it's conceded that it probably could have done some of that stuff for you. It gives you a URL to click, so it takes you to what it was impact thing. What I really like as well is the notes, non-critical, site impacts, maybe. The disk has started to fail. Well, that sounds bad. If this isn't a RAID array with hot swappable drives, remove the server from production immediately and replace the disk. But it's not critical, please critical, I don't know. So this was an example of a bad alert.
It also sounds like it knows what it should do, but it's not actually doing it.
Yep. He pointed out that the context is key, and he referenced something from the US fighter pilots that they use, which is they have an acronym: Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act loops. So basically, they break everything down into the fighter pilots into small loops of they observe, they work out where they are, they decide what they're going to do, and then they act. And that's how they train the pilots, just those feedback cycles constantly. I don't know. Particularly not second-hand information, obviously. His base point was that the alert should help with the observe and orient stage. So, I've raised an alert, well, give me your observations. I've raised an alert, well, tell me about some of the other things that we know we should know about that kind of alert. So if it's the disk is failing, is it because it's running out of space? Is it because the writes are failing? That kind of thing. I think it should probably help with the decide thing as well, so that if we've seen this thing before, what are the steps that should be taken, sort of thing. But he was focused on the 2.0 stages. And then act as well. Ultimately, what you really like is if the system could act on its behalf as well and actually just recover things, that kind of thing. This server's down. I've got a high number of alerts from one server. Okay, do an IS reset. Oh, it's fixed it. Not that we do that a lot. So types of context, that's smaller than I was anticipating. Colour's a good one. So, green and red, don't mark it red saying it's good just because you're trying to emphasize the text. Red indicates it's bad, so stick to that kind of thing. But remember, for colourblind people, his slide deck has a reference to some tools for making sure contrast works well. Graphs, what just happened is a good one. So, if you've had errors, the graph of errors over the last period, but also not just that, have it over the last 24 hours. Because if the spike in the last 5 minutes was a problem, what if it's over the last 24 hours to be doing that all the time? Probably less of a problem. That's normal behaviour. Elasticsearch, so if it's a graph about errors, what were the errors? What were the IPs? We've got that one. Beta, as it were. Were there any releases? Is there any downstream impact? One of the simplest ones we mentioned was, why was the alert added? A lot of that history gets removed. We have a problem in production, we add an alert. There was reason for adding that alert, but in our thing it was an alert. So trying to get that history into the description of the alert so that you've got an actual reason, you know, this alert was added because it led to the entire site going on fire, or this alert was added because we had a very minor outage concerning my account login. So, you know, at 2 a.m. you can look at it and go, I need to raise everyone and get everything sorted, or I've got a bit of time. So, getting the context, he wrote his own plugin for Nagios, which Isinger is forked from, called Nagios Herald. We're working on implementing Isinger 2 at the moment, so we'll cover that elsewhere. But basically, you've got Nagios Herald, which sits in as plugin in Isinger or Nagios, and then a series of plugins such as when was your last release, when was getting graphs, that kind of thing. And it just allows you to add templates to your alert email, so you can see a lot more information. And I've been working on Sentinel as well, so you can add errors with alerts with context. But I don't know, I might ditch that at some point. We'll just use Isinger, Nagios Herald type jobbing. Slides are on that one as well. Apparently. So one of the other ones that wasn't DevOps related was Financial Times Labs. They talked about front-end componentization. So, you know, tactics and strategies you can use so that you have a consistent set of components, people get good reuse, that kind of thing. So a style guide is a really simple example of that. He mentioned Lonely Planets is a really good one. It's quite integrated. It uses the actual components to build the style guide, which is nice, but it does tie you to a specific tech. Obviously, there's a flat style guide such as the BBC's, just gives you kind of like a PDF series of, which just says this is what you're looking for, these colours, that kind of thing. FT used Origami, which they have a website for, which did look really nice. I think it's built on top of a package management system, where essentially you can pull in, well, it's done as a service, but you can pull in components as JS files. It's got automatic documenting based on the tests and stuff like that. And what's really nice is you can actually click on a link in the documents and it'll bring up a JS bin link that you can play with the component in a sandbox environment. So you can get, you know, developers can get a feel for the components. That was really nice. They also have a responsive image service, which might be of interest. I can't spell service. You basically ping it a URL, say what size it is, and boom, returns it in that size. And the polyfill service, which was another nice one. It's hosted, or you can bring it as an NPM, and it basically, you say what your browser is, and it will patch in the specified capabilities. You know, I want push state polyfills, I want other polyfills that I can't think of at the moment. So yeah, the Financial Times Labs guide, I think was good. The componentization stuff could be definitely interesting for us. So the next section does contain some advanced maths. So I can get Ed in to educate us in this. For those who knew, Ed Woodcock was a previous developer who had a propensity for warning us that advanced maths was on the horizon, and it rarely was. He never had this, which I wrote in my notes and had to ask Andy what it was. And it is rate of change. So this guy, his video will explain this much better than I can. He was talking about the bad maths, or the maths behind bad monitoring, or why we find it really difficult to know when things change, series change, that kind of thing. So his point was that we should categorize all the different signal types we have. You know, so you have different signals, you know, unimodal, multimodal, that kind of thing. Very rarely is it actually normally distributed. Performance data, for example, is log normal. You get a spike at the start, and then it has a very, very, very long tail. So, for example, a mean across that, check out Andy's chatter post from earlier today, taking a mean of that data is utterly useless, yet that's what New Relic and Command itself do. It's pretty pointless. What you really want to use is percentiles, because you can shift the point to wherever you want, but means are what they're used. So it's kind of, you're basically saying you need to understand the signals or time series so you can monitor them correctly. And then he also said useful things like don't monitor the rate of things, so you know, don't monitor 5 requests per minute. Instead, monitor the total number of requests you've got, and therefore then calculate the delta, which I believe is what that says.
Rate of change for all V data points above 0.
So basically, you take the total, you compare it with the last value, you work out the time, and then you mean if it goes below 0, then it's reset. Because if you've got performance counter, for example, what you might notice is it's going up, and it's gone back to 0 with the server reset. At that point, you would ignore the delta because it's negative and you don't care about that. So that's why a lot of perfmon counters, I assume, are all about totals, because you're actually meant to get a machine to read it and work out the delta. So he was very big on you should categorize the time series. They had this thing where they basically just get people to look at the algorithm and kind of crowdsource it and say this is unimodal, this is multimodal, and then they can match the right algorithm to do anomaly detection on it. Statistics are only really useful when p-values are low, and I totally didn't look up p-values, but that's basically the size of the population, I think. Some function over it anyway. Basically, for normal, what we quantify as statistics to work, you need the p-value really low, and historically our p-values are not really low. You can improve it by getting more data, so sample faster or sample more servers. And then, obviously, to help with anomaly detection, you need to remove known quantities such as seasonality, daily cycles, and make sure that as the signal changes, your model adapts, that kind of thing. He then goes into a big, long comparison across lots of different models for analysing time series data, which I won't repeat here, but if you are interested, and it was quite interesting, check out his video from a different conference, which is the same talk. And then, statistical learning based on anomaly detection at Twitter, which is a really long word and had lots and lots of maths in it again, but essentially, and then also a large number of comparison of model analysis. They've noticed at Twitter that data is shifting more towards real time, which was odd coming from Twitter, who you would think as being quite real time to begin with. That you can have external, internal factors affecting their time series, such as, for example, it's Christmas Day, so lots of people are tweeting about their Christmas dinner, or Lady Gaga has released an album, so lots of people are talking about Lady Gaga, or you've done a release and you screwed things up, and therefore your time series has changed. So you talked about exogenic and endogenic factors. So they want to do anomaly detection across lots and lots of time series, so they worked out their best model for doing that, which was, it turns out, a combination of several other ones. Again, his slides are there if you want to read through them and find out the ones they compared and then the ones they picked. I think Julian linked me the final output of that, actually, where they've got what they use as their model. Again, useful for anomaly detection, but we're not quite there with that yet. We can't even really render reliably a time series database graph anyway. That's it. Chuck notes. Only half an hour.
So when I slow it down to half speed,
it'll be an hour. Any questions? It was not surprising it was a reasonably large quantity of brain dump. It was good. The Ryan Frantz one was probably the best. I think it's the one we're doing the most on with at the moment. But I think we could do more with synthetic performance data and the componentization stuff. Yes. Yes.
How many of us do you think we can get out there next time?
Hopefully more than one.
Is it in Barcelona again?
No, Amsterdam this year.
Interesting that you, some of the ones that you went to that you hadn't planned to, as usual, that's one if we sort of go to the things that we think we want to go to and hear a lot of the same stuff that we just agrees with what we already know.
Yeah.
And that's just something that there's something about going, isn't there, to random unknown.
Yeah, Chris is probably right. There probably is a cognitive bias in there somewhere. There was a couple other ones I went to that were pretty good, just that I didn't take a lot of notes on because I don't think there was much we could do much about it. There was a couple about women in tech in terms of, just diversity in tech, to be honest, and we have a tendency to hire people very similar to ourselves, as amply demonstrated by looking around the table.
They don't apply. When they do work here, we scare them away.
But there's quite a few good talks on that. Just they were more talking about the problem and less about how you solve it. For example, their solution was to perhaps contract in someone to sit on your recruitment board, if such things exist, to make ensure increase diversity, that kind of thing. But I'm not sure we could really get away with that. There was a good one that think she was from Etsy as well. She was talking about mansplaining 101. So, don't talk down technically to women just because they were women, that kind of thing. But again, there wasn't much notes-wise to kind of do. It was basically just don't talk down to people, which seemed fairly succinct.
Am I still allowed to talk down to people when they're idiots?
Oh yeah, I'm not talking with Joe. Yeah.
Is there any talk you couldn't go to this year?
There was one that was going to be a clash, and then they cancelled it. So, yeah, that solved my problem for me, really. I'd say I prioritised the DevOpsy stuff over the web performance one, which may have been a mistake. There may be giant leaps forward, but I don't think there has been. And as I say, the ones that I did go to all still talking about the same things we talked about 2 years ago, which is fine, fairly predictable. RAM, synthetic, my tool, your tool, web page test.
Did you see anything that we're not doing in any sort of way at all that you think we should be adopting right now?
Anomaly detection, but we're not there yet. Because so say for example, your problem with the API servers, it reached 85%, we get an alert saying it's breached a threshold. But if you look at it, at around the beginning of December, there was a definitive change between when the time series was flat to when it started creeping up. If we'd had an anomaly detection, we would have been able to say at this point it went from flat to dear. Stuff like that. We're very dependent on people spotting things in New Relic, spotting things in Cabana, but we also should be getting computers to do that because human error. We can't rely on people to look at, especially this. We've got so many graphs, we've got so many dashboards. You get dashboard fatigue. You can't look at everything, and we shouldn't. The solution to the site keeps going down isn't to get the out of hours folks to sit there looking at graphs and phone someone up when something goes wrong. It's to get robots to do it. And that's anomaly detection. And it's difficult, but we can help ourselves out by using tools such as Graphite, which already has a family of tools on top of it. New Relic is good to bootstrap us up to a certain point, but if we want to do something with the data that just isn't looking at graphs or breaching on arbitrary thresholds, we're going to need to do something a bit cleverer. So we're not doing any of that, but hopefully we will do. Else? Cool.
Thanks.
It's muted.
No, it flashes.